Hello everyone and welcome back to the Evan Here's Culture Campaign. Today we're going to be talking about just an incredible album, Jamila Woods' 2019 album, Legacy Legacy. Now you might be wondering, what is Legacy Legacy? Well, it is a concept album, and I am a sucker for concept albums. But normally, when I think of a concept album, I usually think of something that has a narrative, beginning, middle, and end that are connected by some thematic through line, but the concept in this album is so much more ambitious and brilliant than that. The idea is that every track on the album is named after a different historical figure, mostly African American, but a few other marginalized groups as well. And they're a collection of artists and poets and writers and thinkers of those representing those groups, which is just such an interesting idea for an album, and that is taken in so many different directions. You have some songs that are basically just inspired by the figure and use their words to create a song based around that, but some are directly from the perspective of the person that the song is named after, which creates such an interesting, it's almost like Quantum Leap in a sense, the television show where Scott Bakula would jump into different time periods and different people's minds. It's kind of like that in a way, which is just such an ambitious idea. So I love that as a concept, and that would be one thing if it was just a great concept, but it's executed on in such a fantastic way as well. There were only a few figures on the album that I knew before going into it. I think it was Eartha Kitt, James Baldwin, Frida Kahlo, and Zora Neale Hurston were the only ones that I knew just off the top of my head, which made it so much fun to go in and look up the history of all the figures who were being referenced and talked about, because this is an album that you can enjoy just on a surface level without knowing anything going into it. But if you do your homework and put a little bit of effort into learning about these figures, it takes it up to an even higher level. And that's kind of reflected in the album. There's one song, Octavia, which is based on Octavia Butler, who was an Afrofuturist science fiction writer, and it opens with the line, "Don't be afraid of a textbook," which is a gorgeous line about how we should always, be trying to expand our knowledge, and it shouldn't be something that we're fearful or timid about. So I love the album from a lyrical standpoint, but we haven't even talked about the music so far, which is a brilliant mixture of R&B and soul. It's very mellow and kind of sedated and laid back in a sense. There's not really many up-tempo songs on the album, but that is even better because it allows you to just soak in the songs and kind of take in all the ideas that are being thrown at you. If there's one song that I really recommend from the album that would be sort of the highlight for me, it was Zora, which is based on Zora Neale Hurston. And that might just, the reason I connected with it so much or liked it so much was maybe just because Zora Neale Hurston was probably the historical figure on the album that I knew the most about. Just because last year I was in this class called Real Race In and Out of Hollywood, which was all about exploring African-American representation in Hollywood. And for that, we read one of Zora Neale Hurston's books, so I was familiar with her writing going into it. And the chorus of this song is, "You will never know everything, everything. I will never know everything, everything," which I like just the way that sounds in the poetry of it. But our professor for Real Race had this mantra that she would always say every class, which is, "How do you know what you don't know, which is the idea that there's gaps in our knowledge that the only way we can compensate for is finding out the history that's sort of been buried. So it was amazing that there was a connection in that you will never know everything, I will never know everything. How do you know what you don't know? You don't know. So I love that song. That is my favorite track on the album. But I plan to listen to it a few more times and find the other standout tracks. It's just, this is a really great album. It's this amazing, I know I said it doesn't necessarily have a narrative, but in a way there is an overarching narrative because we're traveling through all these different artists and creatives of the 20th century were sort of learning about the development of the thought and the ideology throughout those times. It just doesn't have a definitive starting and end point throughout it. It's just this massive ethnographical project, which is brilliant. I know this show is sort of based on the very pretentious assumption that there's anybody out there who gives a damn about my opinion, but if there is one album that we covered so far that you have to listen to, it is Soccer Mommy's Clean. But immediately after, you should listen to Legacy. I think it is just a brilliant album that is operating on such a high level. Check it out. This has been the Evan Here's Culture campaign. We're a tenth of the way through, and we're just going to keep going and going. The snowball's never stopping.